Good afternoon. Welcome to the Policy Forum of South by Southwest EDU. This is a little new venue where we're closing out EDU today, but also starting up the main South by Southwest, and wanted a few opportunities for people to join in discussions related to policy and changed practices. We have a panel here from the Central Texas region, supported by the Greater Austin Chamber of Commerce. So you'll notice that there's no testosterone on the stage here today, but we do have supporters who have been part of prepping and putting together this panel today. So thank you to Drew Scheberle, and thank you to Gil Zavala, and thank you to the work of the Chamber and the business community here in the Central Texas region. We have a wonderful panel that I hope that you enjoy that includes Shasta Buchanan sitting next to me. Shasta is all things partnerships for Austin Community College. You may not know because different parts of the state and the country are different, but here in our 5-county region and a little beyond that, we are blessed to have one community college system with multiple campuses that allows us to have that bridge between high schools and four-year universities in a cohesive community college system, and anything that ties to any of that is pretty much Shasta's domain. Sitting next to her is Nikki Graham, the president of Bank of America here in the Central Texas region. She is the chair of the Education Council of the Greater Austin Chamber. So she works with chamber staff and with school district partners and with ACC and others to say what are the business interests in better aligning the work of education and educational outcomes. And on the flip side of that, we have Cynthia Patterson, who is with Home Depot Technologies, who is chair of the Talent Council in the Greater Austin Chamber, and how do we acquire the talent that we need for our businesses now and into the future. So we want to ask just a first couple of questions of each of these panelists, and then we're going to launch into a conversation and be talking about not just where have we been in the past, but what do we see things now, especially in tech-driven Austin. We are a entrepreneurial hub, we're a tech hub, and things are changing here. They're changing all over the country and the world, that they're certainly changing our lives, and so we want to have that conversation with you today. There'll be two ways to join in the conversation. If you would like to ask a question out loud, there is a microphone in this aisle of the audience. So please step up. Please, we don't want speeches, we want questions. But we would like you to be able to interact with our presenters. And don't feel like you have to wait till the end. If you've got a question that comes up that's burning right then, feel free to step up. Or you've, I'm sure, done this in other panels. We have Slido. You can put your question into the system, and by doing so, others can rate, and if there are people who have multiple people with the same question, it'll rise to the top, and I'll see it, and we'll answer those questions as we go along. Lastly, I'm going to introduce myself. Again, my name is Susan Dawson. I am an engineer and technology entrepreneur that spent most of my time with tech startups here in the Austin area, but I left the private sector 13 years ago to form a nonprofit called Education Equals Economics, E3 Alliance. And what we do is provide a backbone collective impact platform working with school districts, institutions of higher education, businesses, nonprofits to say how do we change systems throughout the region to get many more students successfully through our educational pipeline. So with that, I'm going to start with Nikki and have you tell us just a little bit more about what it is that you do with Bank of America and with the Chamber, and then can you describe the Direct to College 70, the DTC 70 work that's going on in the Chamber Education Council?
Right, sure. Susan told us that our first question was actually going to be, what were we doing in middle school? So I thought that I was all poised for that first question.
No, it was actually,
apparently,
what did they call you?
Did they call, yeah.
What was your worst nickname in middle school? Do you have that one?
Icky Ham. So everybody be prepped for that question when it's your turn. But DTC 70 was really created out of Opportunity Austin. So as many of you may know, Austin has a boom and bust reputation. We're in a boom. There's not a bust in sight, so we're not worried about it. But it really came out of Opportunity Austin when we were looking at what is the next wave of Austin's employers, like what employers were we going to bring to Austin. And so obviously there was a huge emphasis on technology. And with that came making sure that we had an educated workforce to meet the demand. And Drew and others at the Chamber launched DTC 70, which was really an initiative to get folks to enroll direct in college after high school graduation. So there were a number of initiatives in Austin at the time that were focused on high school graduation, but really that effort to get from high school to college was the impetus to that. So the goal was 70%. We've reached 63% this past year. Now, granted, it's gone up, kind of up and down, so that's varied over the years. But for the most part, the initiative has been extremely successful. And when we think about the workforce needs in the future, 60% of the current jobs are going to need at least some sort of post-secondary education, whether that's 2 or 4 year. So it's something that we really do have to focus our energies on, and that's why it was initially created.
So let me put that into context for those of you who may never have heard of Opportunity Austin, because I was lucky enough to be chamber chair in 2001 when the tech bubble truly, truly burst here. We lost 30,000 jobs literally in the matter of a couple of months. I would have newsmen call me and say, I'm on the way to your office. We'll be live on the air tonight. Could you explain why Dell is laying off 5,000 people today? And I would be like, well, why the hell can't Dell explain why Dell is laying off 5,000 people today? But that's what you get to do when you're chamber chair. And so through that experience, we decided we really needed to come together, education, business, the whole community, and say, how do we prepare for that not happening the next time? And that's where Opportunity Austin came from. And it truly has been very successful for our region to have that integrated approach. So since we launched Opportunity Austin in 2004, we've created 400,000 new jobs in the Central Texas region, $22 billion in new wages. So it is something that we look to as a way to work cohesively as a community. But it's not all about business. A lot of that is about how do we prepare those future workers. And that's where Shasta comes in. Tell us what you're doing in terms of partnerships and have been doing in partnerships with the Austin Community College and others in this sector.
So no middle school name?
Well, go for it.
I want a I want a Shasta. So I heard that a lot growing up. So I'm the Associate Vice President of College and High School Relations for Austin Community College. So basically I become our school districts. We have about 26 school districts. I become their best friend. And so I have an amazing staff that works with about almost 7,400 students throughout our service area that are participating in dual credit, early college high schools, PTECs, which are Pathways and Technical Early College. So it includes an industry partner, and also career academies. And those career academies provide an opportunity for students to earn a level 1 certificate in a high demand career. And the PTECs allow students to earn an associate's degree in a workforce area. With the career academy, students are guaranteed an internship or a clinical rotation. So when you really think about it, students have to demonstrate college readiness, just like a traditional student. And so they're craving that opportunity. We say all the time, our students want to be active participants in their learning. So in order to do that, the 21st century high school student looks very different. Their classrooms look different. Their facilities at their high schools look different. So we really have to sit down as partners and talk about how do we map and align the curriculum, the high school curriculum, because priority is high school graduation. And then how do we align that with the college curriculum and those learning outcomes. But where the industry partner comes in, they also look at that to make sure, are we meeting the expectation and needs of the industry? And they bring in that reality focus. They bring in that application, because you can learn everything you want in a book, but when you get into reality, how do I apply that knowledge and learning? How do I troubleshoot? So we spend a lot of time with that, and our industry partners are amazing at how they spend time with students. So they serve as mentors. The students can job shadow. With the PTECs, they're guaranteed an interview for a full-time job. And some of those students even earn internships. And I know Susan's gonna ask us other questions later, kind of to have a deeper dive, but that's kind of that way of how we're starting to involve the students and how we also share facilities. with the college, the ISD, as well as some of our industry partners. So really thinking and looking differently at how we build the pipeline for our workforce early, because that becomes super important as well.
And one of the things that's exciting is that in these industry partnerships with our schools, they started with our largest employers, our Setons, our Dells of the world, but we're really seeing now more of the small employers having partnerships with Lanier High School, for instance, and others. Now, Cynthia, you're with Home Depot Technologies, so you're hiring technology people, probably as much as you can, and probably, I'm guessing that's not an easy job at the moment. We have a 2.7% unemployment rate. There were over 7,000 IT jobs posted just in the last month, just in the Austin area. Some of those, I bet, were yours. Yes. What are you doing to try to bring in the workforce that you need?
Well, and I'll keep the trend going. So, nickname middle school. Yep. I was Energizer Bunny because I ran track, and so they said I never gave up. But that was my name. But Home Depot Technology, we're really benefiting from the great work that both Nikki's efforts and Shasta's efforts are doing. So in partnership of getting this workforce in Austin ready for the jobs that are open, that foundation has really helped us from that perspective. Now, 2.7% unemployment rate coupled with 7,300 jobs opening in 30 days, that equals difficult, right? So what we're doing is, in addition to the great work that Shasta and Nikki's teams are doing and their companies are doing, what we're really doing at Home Depot is making sure that we're going out and we're being creative, we're being innovative, and so it might not be the typical 4-year college graduate that we're going after. Maybe we have to be a little more creative and really partner with other training initiatives that are out there in the community, and looking for other ways to dig around in that 2.7% unemployment rate, and even go beyond that and look to see who are those individuals who are out there who might be employed, but maybe they're underemployed. And so finding ways to get them through boot camps, just being very innovative, looking for ways that we can be attractive as an employer, because with 7,300 jobs being posted out there, that means that we have competitors, right? And so Home Depot Technology is not the only show in town. We're up against the Dells, the IBM, the Googles, the Facebooks, the Visas. Every time you turn around, which is a good problem to have, from as just being a resident of the city, being in an environment where there are opportunities everywhere. Now the focus is making sure that you're getting the best talent and that you're retaining that talent.
Do you have any idea, Cynthia, of those that you say you've hired in the last couple of years, what percentage of them were trained and maybe upskilled or came out of our high school or college system here in Central Texas versus you had to import from some other part of the country or the world?
I would say right now, which that's one of the areas we want to do a better job of, what we're noticing, the university system here is great. We have the University of Texas, we have Texas State that's down the road. We have several universities in the area that are doing a great job of producing entry-level talent. So that entry-level talent, the majority of that is coming from the area. Mm-hmm. And then we're having to go out and recruit some of the more senior positions.
Right. Okay, so let's shift a little bit because we're going to talk about the tech-driven Austin, right? And things are changing pretty rapidly around us. I was just this morning with someone who's a leader at IBM locally who claimed, and I don't know if this is right, it seems pretty ambitious to me, but claimed that artificial intelligence is going to mean that half of the jobs currently out there are obsolete within 10 years. Maybe it's not that fast, but we know that employment and employers are having to change as we think about what does that mean for both preparation and bringing people into the workforce and keep them current once they're there. Open it up to anybody. What do you all have? What do you think as you're dealing with not just these problems of preparing a workforce and hiring, but the technology that's changing around us?
So what we're noticing at Home Depot is that we're streamlining and we're repurposing. So it's not so much that jobs will go away. The current jobs
We're
will
not
go
all
away
going to be
in
jobless
meaning,
within 10 years?
No. So that's not what it means. It just means that we have to repurpose the workforce that's out there, and they're going to go on and do other things. And with that, I think keeping it in mind and really trying to look ahead 10 years and getting that workforce brought up to that point, we know that the jobs will look different in 10 years. They won't be the same jobs that are here today.
You know, with school districts, when we work with our industry partners and we sit in the room, they're a part of the conversation in designing the programs. They talk about the careers of the future. So our students, when you start early and you build that pipeline, they're learning about how to be more effective and efficient. So they're preparing for that career of the future instead of already being somewhere along and then they're trying to figure out, what do I do? So when you start thinking about younger students starting early, they're learning as the industry is changing. So they're understanding how to be nimble and flexible and how to use transferable skills into the next job to upskill as well.
Well, and I think we're seeing the same thing in financial services industry, not completely unlike Home Depot, where you have very much a relationship business going on in our financial centers and our wealth management and on our business banking and commercial banking side. But few people realize that almost half our workforce is in our tech and ops area. So
Here in Austin or
across,
nationwide?
yeah, globally. Right. So we have like 90,000 employees that are in technology and operations. So we actually have more tech and ops employees than Google has. So
really?
It's, yeah, and we have more patents than any other technology company.
I see that as a challenge when Nikki said.
But our business is evolving, and it continues to. As a matter of fact, we just recently opened what we call an advanced center near Buda there's no people in it. So basically, you just swipe your debit card and you go in, and a video pops up, and all of your financial needs are met through video. So you're just choosing how you want to interact, but it's all video. And
Well, why do you go into the site then? Why don't you do this from home in your pajamas?
Well, it's all about meeting people where they are. And so, but you bring up a great point. I mean, there's all kinds of new technologies that allows people to bank from home, to deposit checks, on their mobile device, to transfer payments through Zelle, or to just use mobile banking, which has been recognized by J.D. Power, both on the wealth management side or on just our retail banking side. So there's been a constant. I remember 10 years ago when we were merging a bunch of different financial institutions at the same time, people thought, oh, this is the end of the financial center. But that's not the case. I mean, you're not going to Amazon Home Depot. I mean, people need to talk to somebody about what their needs are. So
I
it's
need
changing.
the orange apron.
What's that?
I need the person in the orange apron.
There you go. Exactly. Or the suit. Whatever that looks like. But exactly. So the employment needs are changing. But what I will say, there's always going to be that need for both. But we see more and more employees that are seeking technology skills just so they have a backup. So even if they have an MBA, there's probably some technology training in there somewhere.
And just from a company viewpoint, we recognize that. And so you'll see most employers now what they're doing is offering in-house training as well. So you never stop learning, you never stop honing those skills and continuing to move on to the next. So we employ here in Austin 20 trainers that's their job, to go out, find the new technologies, find the new platforms that are being introduced, next year, year after that, and making sure that our technologists are getting that in-house training.
Okay, so as you all are doing this, as you're understanding what are these technology trends, what is AI going to mean for your employees, tell me both about how you are partnering with future workers for internships or outreach or summer jobs or whatever? And also, what are you doing with your existing workforce to develop those new skills?
Yeah, great. So I'll start with the existing associates first. So our employees, we have what we call Orange Method, and it's an in-house training. We and the cool thing about this is that for Home Depot, obviously most people know Home Depot as the big orange box, the stores, right? And so those stores employ cashiers, salespeople, and none of which are typically a technology focused position. So what we launched 2 years ago was a way for us to use that workforce, this 300,000 out in the field, and say, okay, maybe our next engineer is out there already at a store. So we have a 16-week boot camp that we have in-house. It's for our internal associates, and they can come learn coding, and when they graduate out of that system, then 16 weeks, they're a software engineer. And so they move from working in the stores to working in one of our technology offices, either here or in Atlanta. And so that's what we're doing internally. And in addition to that, we also have short boot camps, short workshops that make sure that we are always teaching internally that new language. And our trainers, that's what they do. They go out and they find those, and then they train. So for our externally, what we're doing is making sure that we stay connected to the universities, to ACC, different schools around, so that we can go out, find that talent. We offer a 12-week summer internship. And last summer, we had 50 interns here locally. And that's what we do. We offer that internship. We get them real world experience, and then after that, if they're successful, we invite them to join the company.
So for when we're talking about engaging students, I wanted to share, so we have a new program that's coming up for students, and it's app development. So they can learn different languages. And so when you talk about coding, and that's embedded in that program, is the students will have a project ship between their junior and senior year in high school, and then they'll have an internship at the end. So then they're looking at coding, they're developing a project and coding it, and then able to apply that then in a work environment. For our younger students, I know I mentioned earlier I work with the school districts, and my team, we work a lot with the high schools, but we also reach down to the middle schools. We are asking high school students to make some life decisions that most of us made when we were freshmen in college. So we're now asking an 8th grader to kind of figure out their pathway earlier in the state of Texas. And so for middle schools, we have a unique partnership with Verizon, as well as NACCE, the National Association of Community College Entrepreneurship. And so this summer, we'll have 145 middle school girls on our campuses, but those students receive a tablet. They are doing 3D printing. We have 3D printers that were donated to us through Verizon and NACCE. And they go through that whole process of STEM-related careers and augmented reality, and then they have to develop a project to solve a community problem. So they can use coding. So when you start talking about building your pipeline, and so now these students are that much more advanced. And the students that we look at and we're focusing, we want to bring in more students of color, more first-generation students, students from low socioeconomic backgrounds, because now they can build a network that they may never have had. Think about a junior in high school that's first generation, and I know Nikki. They're not going to call you Nikki, but they know you, and she's connected me, and they're explaining things differently that probably I would have had to wait until after high school to learn, or even after that. I'm learning early, so I'm building my capital in terms of my career early with actual application into that work.
One of the things that we've learned through DTC 70 is that those students who do not enroll direct to college, is 50% of those are unemployed when we survey them a year later. Of those who are employed, if they didn't go directly to college, 90% of them are living below a livable wage. And so I think that's where Bank of America has targeted. So of course we have our college college internships, and we bring in folks to intern at some of our larger cities. But across the board in different communities across America, we have what we call a student leader program. And so we select 5 students, and those students go through a process where they are interning. We pay them to intern at a nonprofit, just so they're learning more about their community, and then also are able to empower that nonprofit to do better, to serve the students that are around them. And then we also have a summer jobs program, which we partner through the U.S. Conference of Mayors. And so we'll actually, the city selects the students, but we pay for their internship, and they can intern anywhere. So it might be a city office, it might be a nonprofit, or if there's even a for-profit entity that can take a high school student as an employee, we'll pay for them to go there. And then we hire, this year we'll be hiring 6 students to come work at Bank of America. So we've approached it a slightly different way. So we're doing not only bringing in those interns and folks into Bank of America proper, but then we're also working in the community at the grass level to really kind of grassroots to find those students. And we recently launched last year a career pathways program where we're working with those local nonprofits to create a career pathway to pull those students through for example, Houston Tillotson, we might partner with Houston Tillotson or St. Edward's to get them through their system and then come work at the bank. So
we're talking about some kind of cool whiz-bang opportunities for students to accelerate and to move quickly into these fields, but there are a lot of students that don't get that path, that don't get those opportunities. And I'm thinking in particular, as more and more of our jobs, and it doesn't matter whether you're a nurse or a welder or whatever, requires higher level of technology, we often see that what's limiting those students is their mathematics. And they get to typically a community college and are put on the remedial track for mathematics, and it's the circle of death. They never get a credential to be able to get that higher ed credential towards the job. Austin Community College has done a really unique job by creating what's called the accelerator to get students out of that trap. Can you tell us more about the accelerator, Shasta?
So, and the state of Texas has added co-requisites. So now you're adding that developmental education along with them being able to move along in their chosen degree path.
And made it a requirement
yes.
that every community college have the co-requisite courses.
You have to have it. But with the accelerator, the students get to learn at their own pace. So they're not lost in that tunnel. They also have all of this support in the accelerator. I forget, Dr. Rhodes, our president, talks about it's the size of so many football fields, but it's a lot of computers. But it's not just the computers, it's also the people and the students, and they can ask for help. They can get the help that they need, but it's that module style learning. And when we start going back and thinking about how technology helps us help students better so we can be more effective with them, it has that intelligence to be able to know, okay, I'm messing up in this particular area in math. Well, that system has that intuition, or it's intuitive enough to be able to see, well, before we advance them, let's spend a little bit more time on a few more of these problems, if you will. And then the student can get help, or then the student, once they master that, they can continue to move on. And then they can go through at their own pace in that particular subject area. And then once they're done, they're showing that they're ready in that particular area and they can move on in their degree. Because Susan's right, they get stuck. And I think the accelerator is just an innovative way to be able to combine technology and that human capital to be able to support students. But then behind the scenes, the technology is able to let us see where are students in general having difficulty. How can we solve that on the back end later? Can we build in some better curriculum? Because we know students technically or traditionally getting stuck in this particular area. So it's just a unique way to sit down and engage both the technology as well as that human person to be able to support students in an open environment.
And the key that you're talking about there is not applying the traditional 12-week structure that we've had in the past, but this learning at their own pace, they're demonstrating competencies. Remember, if anybody has questions, you can come up to the mic or put a Slido question in. We've got a Slido question here specifically about that demonstrating competencies, and our Austin companies and or the community college looking into or recognizing the digital badges that demonstrate competencies needed in different industries. Are you all using that now?
We are not.
Bank of America? Yeah.
And we may be. But I'm not, quite honestly, I don't know who asked that question, but I think, specifically, I'm not sure that we are, but I'd love to learn more about it.
There are many, many, many certifications that are given in our high schools today aligned with different industries, and they can be technology certifications and cosmetics and all sorts of things. The Texas Education Agency 2 years ago, first started actually tracking and logging and seeing what are the trends across the state for what industry certifications are being given. We actually at E3 Alliance had done some research about 5 years ago, and it was pretty depressing. Basically, what we found is that there were many hundreds of industry certifications given to our high school students, but they had nothing to do with what was providing value to companies in the field, and nothing even to do with what the students want. They had everything to do with what the teacher was already trained in. So we certainly have a ways to go to figure out, are we aligning certifications to what's needed?
What I will say is, especially in the financial services industry, you have, especially in wealth management, you have a significant number of licensing that has to take place in order to give financial advice. And then to work in a financial center, you have to complete a series of tests to be able to interview. And I think in times past, it was very much a normal thing for a college freshman to work at a bank and pay, the bank would pay for them to go to college. And so we have many senior executives that went that route. And I think what this kind of whole conversation around testing or credentialing, I think is a challenge. And we've had a couple of instances where, say, our students that have gone through our internships have then taken the test where we knew they were completely capable and had even worked with money before, but when they took the entry test to get an interview, they weren't successful. And so we have had some instances where we've kind of gone back and done some just training and sat down because we knew the individual who was applying. And then it just was a little bit of tweaking that needed to take place so that they understood what was being asked on the test. So,
can I go back, Susan, to you made a statement about, in the high schools, certain certifications that really didn't have value on the other side.
Does it have value in the marketplace?
Right. And so we spend a lot of time at the table talking about adults get out of the way, because we all have our own platforms. We all have the thing that we love, the island that we live on. I love my program. This new thing is coming. Or
teaching French.
Right. Right. And so it's like this other program is going to step in and steal away my program I've worked so hard to develop. But as adults, we have to get out of the way. The students are telling us what we want, but we're holding them hostage to things that are in the past. And it's like, why we also need to be able to upskill our way of thinking and what we offer students. And so we've had those issues of, but this particular department at our school, they got mad because I took some of the kids that were in their program and started when they were freshmen, and I was like, please get out the way. This particular program, this company, if they are successful, plans to hire those students right out of that program. And so we have to start thinking differently as adults too, and challenge each other to get out of the way and pay attention to what our students are saying they want, and think differently with what's happening in the school environment.
And I think we also have to really pay attention to how we're defining those credentials and certifications, and how we're presenting those to the student. It's not an end all. And so, like I mentioned earlier,
you're talking about like stackable credentials and continuing education.
Correct. You will, especially in the technology industry, what you're doing this month will be old school 2 months from now. So you're always having to continue to learn, continuing to figure out what it is that either the current job that you're in or that future job that you want, what is it that they're looking for, and continue to work towards those things. But one of the conversations that we had a couple months ago with ACC was very refreshing in that they get it. And Austin Community College has really partnered with the employers in the area to find out what is it that you need, and are willing to build that curriculum based on what's relevant and what's really needed by employers in the area.
So there's a Slido question here that relates exactly to what y'all are talking about now, which is recognizing that what you know this month is going to be different within a few months from now, and recognizing that we know that that means we need systems that provide different skills. What does that mean for our teaching force? Do we have educators who are prepared to train in those new skills? And if not, what are we doing about training our education force so that we can build those new skills with our students?
Everyone looked at me. So I think we have some absolutely wonderful teachers that are ready to reimagine what that looks like. Particularly, for the high school side, you have CTE, so Career and Technical Education. And we spend a lot of time talking about CTE in the 21st century is very different than vocational education that we talked about when a lot of us were in school. And so it's really that application, and it's based on industry need and what's going through that process. For us at ACC, the way we have started that process of addressing it is that we sponsor teachers on the CTE side. So if they need to complete a degree to meet certain qualifications to teach on the college side, we will sponsor them and provide stipends so they can complete that degree. On CTE and workforce, you have to have both the education, and at a minimum, depending on program, an associate's degree, and then you need at least 3 years of actual non-teaching work experience in a lot of our programs. So if teachers have that non-teaching experience, we will sponsor them so they can complete that. So we see teachers interested in that on the CTE side because they definitely want to be able to provide something different and deliver a different kind of instruction for their students instead of just letting it be high school credit. Because we spend a lot of time saying you're an academic student and you can do this academic work and you can go to college, but our CTE students can also take college courses, earn some college credit, and apply that towards a degree or certificate as well and go into the workforce. So we definitely have started that process, and I think the state of Texas is really looking at different ways to engage teachers differently, particularly on that CTE side.
So we can see you all, but not well. How many of our audience members are from Texas? Most of you. How many of you are very or relatively familiar with what's called HB 5, the HB 5 legislation in 2013? A few people. So to tie into that, HB 5 was passed in 2013 legislative session, was the single biggest education policy change in the state of Texas for many, many decades. And it did a whole variety of things by the time it ended up in law, but it massively changed the high school curriculum expectations for students. And so after that, E3 was funded to do some research about what would we predict that would do for our student population. We found very different findings. First of all, HB 5 significantly increased the opportunity and the expectations that students would have access to these CTE courses and career pathways, and that can be a very good thing. In fact, our research says that those students who took not just one cosmetology class and one engineering class and one culinary arts class, but actually took a sequence of career-oriented courses is far more likely to succeed, far more likely to be college ready, to graduate, to go to college, to get that ultimate credential, and in fact that it closed gaps between our low-income students and our not low-income students. On the other hand, that same legislation significantly lowered the expectations for the mathematics courses that were required for students, and so essentially what we did is made Algebra 2 and every math beyond that optional for students in the state of Texas. What our research says is that those students who take and pass Algebra 2, which is now optional for almost every student, have less than a 1 in 5 chance of getting any kind of post-secondary credential. So on the one hand, we're doing great things for students. On the other hand, we're setting policy that is setting up our students for failure. Do you all see other policies that are happening either at our high schools or colleges or in business and industry or coming down from the state or feds that are helping us navigate this change of increased digitalization, there's a word there, increased technology in the workforce and increased need for training? Are you all seeing barriers? Or are you seeing ways that policy is helping us? Other than HB5, which I know Drew has lots of opinions about, but we're not going to bring him up on the stage to talk right now.
I mean, I would just say, I don't know that this necessarily gets to your question, but I would say, you know, there was a time when I first started doing some of the education work in communities where you'd run into high school administrators who were really focused on graduating. You know, it was just students need to graduate. And so just over the last, you know, let's just call it even 8-9 years, you really see more and more administrators focusing on what's the long-term ability. Yeah, what comes after that. And so, you know, we're currently in, you know, a daily newspaper barrage of what's going to come out of, you know, the House Finance, you know, or the school finance discussion, and what that ultimately results in, and how much we're willing to push the system to get students who come out who, you know, who are challenged by the things that you're talking about, you know, math and reading and math and these objectives, to ensure that they're spending that, you know, those 12 years to prepare them to be college and career ready. So there's the potential for barrier and there's the potential for success. Yep.
So I'm going to say it, but I'm so scared to say it because I feel like someone will hate me or you'll love me.
It can't be worse than your middle school nickname.
Oh, my name. I think it's high stakes testing. You know, I had an opportunity to conduct some focus groups of students that we work with. And it was interesting that whether students were in a very affluent school, a school that people would say is quote unquote inner city, or if it was rural, all the students said the same thing. What happened to my words, portfolio of work? I have 4 years of work, but it's this test that is going to change my life or determine what I can do next. And it was interesting, all the students in different schools, different school districts, they said that was one of the biggest takeaways from that focus group. So it was just what happened to all the work that I did. And when you're an adult and you're an educator and you're hearing your students tell you that, it says a lot about what our young people are saying. And even our students that are in our Upward Bound program even shared, they said we would love for adults to take a step back and hear what we're trying to say. So that was a separate group of students at a different time. So for me, I think it's high stakes testing.
Interesting. So we've talked a lot about technology skills and needs, and as the world changes around us, we have a question about what we used to call soft skills. If Sandy Dochin were here, he'd call them professional skills. What are the top 3 skills, both Cynthia and Nikki, that you all look for that have nothing to do with the technology or the courses that they took necessarily, but the professional skills that they need to have developed to be successful in your industry?
All right, so a couple pop into mind immediately. One is being able to build relationships or form good working relationships with people. As long as you can work with someone, you typically can be successful. And then the second thing is the ability to learn. You don't necessarily have to come equipped with all of the skills, but be willing and open to be able to develop.
One of the things in all of the programs that I would ditto exactly. I mean, it's all about, especially when you're in a relationship business, it's all about the ability to build those relationships, and then also the flexibility to learn. Because oftentimes, if you look at career paths anywhere in our company, it's not a straight line. So I think a lot of kids are taught that it's a straight line for their career. And it's really, anyone you talk to, it's just kind of a jagged. So it's that willingness to learn something new every day along your career path. But the other thing, and I've been interviewing some high school students recently, and I've just been really fascinated by the ability to talk about your strengths. just the students' ability to clearly articulate what they're good at. You see there's just certain folks that are very articulate and they can just rail off what they're really good at. And then there's just some students that aren't able to do that, whether it's an essay form or in person. And if you're interviewing and you can't articulate the 3 or 4 things that you do really well, it's
hard
just
to convince somebody that you do things really well.
That's right. And even if you're trying to pull that out of students. And so just as for those of you in the room who are educators or work with students, it's just a trend that I'm seeing in certain students that it's really important that they have that ability to do so.
And one thing that seems to tie to what Shasta was saying earlier about the testing, when you focus so much on the test and teaching to the test and making sure that you're going to answer the questions right on the test, it does a disservice to the student who in any other element would just be out there curious and learning and kind of solving things and trying to figure it out on their own. I think when you compartmentalize how how they need to go about answering these particular questions or doing this thing in this way, it takes away all of that ability to be creative and to just really express themselves and bring that diversity of thought to their employers. And that's what we're really looking for, diversity of thought, someone that can continue to learn.
Well, and this is something that we really struggle with as a state of Texas, right? We have 5.4 million students in the state of Texas. We want them all to be successful. We spend tens of billions of dollars in the system. We need the system to be accountable, so we need to be able to assess, are they learning what we want them to learn to be successful and have these marketable skills? On the other hand, if we use that in a way that's punitive and doesn't help students perform at higher levels, then we create a system that builds upon itself. And so that balance is really, really difficult.
But I do think we have to acknowledge in that we do have a system of testing. So it's if you want to go into graduate school or even in the workplace, there's a series of tests that I just mentioned a few, that would be potential barriers for entry to the workforce. So I completely understand the point. I also think it needs to be kind of nuanced in that, what do we want our students to achieve, and just the acknowledgement that the workforce does require a series of testing. So if folks aren't prepared for that, it doesn't end at high school.
Sure. Absolutely. The other thing that I would mention, though, is that when Shasta was talking about these CTE courses, often the CTE courses are where those skills like working in teams well and communicating what you're best at and those kinds of skills are often learned in the CTE classes.
Yeah, if I could add something too, when we were talking about what kind of skills students need or what employees need, one of the things my husband, he's an engineer in research and development, and he always says troubleshooting. He spends a lot of time teaching other engineers on the tools that he designs, and he says, I guess maybe it's just my kids, when it breaks, I'm done with it, And he's like, you have a different generation of engineers now, or depending on company, and, it's broken. And he's like, no, it's not broken. So I think troubleshooting is another, so I guess that critical thinking is very important for students in troubleshooting, that there are different ways to maneuver before you just throw your hands up.
Right. And that problem solving, that critical thinking is traditionally what's harder to assess. Our current tests that we use, the STAR test now, are much better than the TAX test, are much better than the TOS test, but at those kinds of critical thinking skills, but it's always been difficult for sure. Okay, give just, we have about 10 minutes left, so do you want to ask a question? Is there somebody at the microphone?
Sure. Hi, I'm Shana. I teach at the Engineering Academy, Texas A&M Engineering Academy at Austin Community College. Yay. So shout out to that. Anyway, it's a co-enrollment program that allows students to stay in the Austin area for 1 to 2 years while they take both ACC and A&M engineering classes, and then transition to A&M to finish their bachelor's degree. So my question is, Do you see more of the blending of, say, majors? Even within the field of engineering, there's things like mechatronics now that never was, and things like that. Do you see blending with things like computer science or even CAD or even welding, and maybe new certificates being created that have a mix of, say, these CTE traditional types of things, or the workforce plus the college credit type of stuff, to support all those critical thinking and those troubleshooting types of skills that you think are important?
I think that goes to Shasta.
You see those degree changes, and what you need in your company specifically as well. You see even the types of degrees or certifications changing in the future.
So one of the things, and I'll pass it over, our dean in our STEM-related fields, he really worked with one of our existing certificate programs in engineering technology, because it allows students, to be pre-calculus ready, and so it makes them more competitive in that A&M Gig'em Engineering Academy program.
I was going to whoop, and I missed it.
I know. I'm an Aggie in a sea of Longhorns, so hi there. So we have a new program that will start in one of our high schools, because they're definitely interested in that. They're interested also in the A&M Engineering Academy. So we really had to think differently and really sit down with A&M. I remember being in that meeting to talk about what are the skills that students need to be competitive to apply for that program. And so how do we package a program where we can start building that pipeline of students that are interested as well?
And so from an employer, about 3 years ago, what we determined we needed to do was take a slight pivot from, we were very traditional for years and years, that said that we needed a 4-year degree and we needed it from computer science to get a software engineer job at the Home Depot Technology. About 3 years ago, we started looking at, maybe it's not just a computer science degree, maybe it's a biology degree, we started looking at, again, going back to the skill sets. So first of all, this person has completed a degree plan, and what were the elements, what things did they learn during this degree plan? And so we now see all types of degrees that come through, but it goes back to, can this person do the job? Do they have the skill sets, and do they have the ability to learn the job?
Especially because, again, we're seeing they need to master these technology skills no matter what their major is, no matter what their function is. So anybody who knows me knows that I can't let you get away without some numbers and some statistics. So I'm going to drop 4 numbers on you that I would like you all to think about. Is that coming up soon, 2/3 of jobs will require some post-secondary credential. Within the next 10 years, we project that 2/3 of all jobs will require something. That could be a 4-year degree, that could be a 2-year degree, that could be a workforce certification, variety of credentials, but something will be needed to have that job. Currently in the state of Texas, 42% of our adults in our workforce have that post-secondary credential. We need 2/3, we have 42%. If you look at our low-income students who graduate high school have a 14% probability of getting that post-secondary credential within 6 years. And for those students who don't have a post-secondary credential of some sort within 6 years of when they would have gotten out of high school, they have a 12% chance of having a living wage job. So when we look at those numbers and say, okay, if you don't have some sort of post-secondary credential, you have a 12% chance of a living wage job within 6 years, we have to get out of the way. We have to align ourselves differently. We have to work in new and different ways to help all of those students find pathways to success beyond high school. So in our closing moments, what would each of you say about what do we do differently to change those numbers?
One of the things that's already kind of teed up and ready to work really well for us in the area, I think, is the work that Workforce Solutions is doing, and that is making sure that we are going out, finding those people who are either unemployed or underemployed, and making sure that we get them the training that they need. And I think as long as we continue as an employer to partner with the Workforce Solutions, the AISD, the ACCs, the different universities around, then we'll close the gap and eventually get ahead of it and make sure that we have. Austin already has one of the most educated and obviously one of the most employed areas in the state. So I think that it will, as long as we continue to stay at the table and continue to work, then it will continue to improve.
If I could, can I just address this first question? I think someone asked a question about students with disabilities, and I just wanted to address that both of our student leader program and our summer jobs program, we both of those programs accept students with disabilities, both physical and cognitive. So we've had students go through both of those programs. One student comes to mind from last year who was on the autism spectrum. Lovely young man who had never been outside of Austin, and he went with the program for a leadership summit in Washington, D.C., and just completely came out of his shell. It was a really remarkable opportunity to see him bloom, and he wants to work at a tech company. So, so the mission is to make sure that he gets lined up for full-time employment once he graduates from college. So,
but that is something that we can do differently. I see Seton, I see Bank of America doing a good job, but across the board, helping those students who have special needs really flourish is something that we need to get better at.
That's exactly right. We have two groups, one in Dallas and one in Delaware, that specifically hires teams of folks with disabilities for those groups. But then back to the question, which is how could I see it as we need to align our systems more efficiently. Just maybe it's my project background, and I'm a huge fan of Susan's and of Drew's, who've been doing this work for a very long time, and we just need better system alignment from pre-K all the way to our employers. So I know a lot of folks are doing a tremendous amount of work around that, but financial support and alignment of those resources need to be put toward this and make this a priority number one.
So I would be remiss, because I was telling Drew my family history before we had this meeting. I come from a family of educators, and I have to say we have some amazing teachers in our space, and we forget times to bring them to the table and have a discussion about how we can do things differently, and talk and bring our teachers and our curriculum designers on the college, the ISD, as well as the industry side, to talk about how do we look at this differently. And then more importantly, we've talked about internships and all those things. We need to bring our HR teams to the table. So how do you have a high school student in an internship, in some of these high demand careers? But I really think if we want to see a change, we have to, if we're talking about changing our curriculum, you have to bring the teachers to the table, and bring those teachers to the table along with our industry partners and our college and university partners to talk about what does this look like, and then why is it important? Because I think if we can explain the whys and the outcomes, I think we'll have some really dynamic things happen through that process.
And bring our students to the table.
And bring our students, that's right.
And so if you want to be part of that conversation, I would like to invite anybody who is from the Central Texas region. We are hosting a series all over the region, north, south, east, west, central, from San Marcos up to Round Rock, of conversations, of deliberative dialogues around how do we build these pathways to prosperity? How do we help our students, our families, our business leaders, our moms who are trying to figure out what to do with their middle schooler, that there are multiple pathways to success, and we need to work together as a community to support them. So if you can invite people, if you would like to be part of those deliberative dialogues, we would love to have you. There are flyers at either end of the stage or on the first chairs up in this first row, and we would love to have you be part of that. I'd like to thank our panel. Y'all have been wonderful today, and we appreciate your doing this at not very long notice. Shasta and Nikki and Cynthia, thank you so much.